Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review, and today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Siege of Power. This is tomorrow, on February 17th, on Metal Blade Records. The album has 11 tracks, 41 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length record. They are an American-Dutch death thrash metal band. When it comes to the design of the album, it's a prototypical design, if you will. The album starts the way it finishes. Very intense, very aggressive, very thick in the sound, in the movement, and even in the atmosphere that it puts together. It's an album that's constantly in your face in those two specific periods of its duration. In the middle of the record, there are a couple of songs that change the movement, that change the fluidity, that pause or at the very least slow down your progression, giving you a different feel, perhaps a little bit more doom-inspired sound, and that is a complete departure from everything else that is around it. Normally, I would gravitate towards a design like this because those songs in the middle of the record perhaps give you the pause and the break that you need in order to better enjoy that last third of the album, so that the record doesn't feel too relentless across each and every single song, also making the album feel perhaps too linear. But when you look at this album and you see the diversity of sound and the diversity of influences, both on the musical side and on the vocal side, I honestly don't feel like there's room for two songs of this nature. You want the album to be a little bit more compact because the diversity that it has, it allows you to be fluid and allows you to have ebbs and flows, and you don't need to break the movement and fluidity that the album has outside of those two middle songs. So to me, this is perhaps the weakest spot on the entire album, which is the design and the inclusion of these two tracks right in that moment. I think if you're going to put them on the album at the end of the record would be a lot better. That way the album is continuous, is fluid, is uninterrupted, and then when you get to the end, you get two songs that break the mold, that feel different, that sound different, but at that time, you've already gone through almost every single track, and the experience is such that maybe makes it easier to digest two songs with those specific characteristics. When it comes to the sound, this is definitely a death thrash album, but it has other influences. Some rock and roll is definitely in there, some more simplified rock and roll, at least as far as some of the song structures are concerned. Even some punk in terms of the shorter tracks, a little bit of hardcore, if you will, crossover thrash. Elements that allow tracks to move a lot better and work in a much short distance of time. There's also doom, like I said, the two tracks in the middle of the album have a little bit more of a doom influence, maybe not necessarily in the sound, but definitely in terms of the atmosphere that they carry and how they come across and the perception that they give you. Overall, this is not an overly produced record. There is some grit in the sound. It's not a fuzzy sounding album, but there's definitely some fuzz in the guitars and how they interact with the drum sound. This is an album that heavily depends on those set guitars. The guitars are the lifeline of everything that has happened. When you look at the diversity that exists on this record, from song construction to song influences to where the songs are taking you, the guitars are normally the element that separates everything and allows you to see exactly what these tracks are all about. So it's a very guitar-centric record, it's a very guitar-focused record, and this allows these diverse elements to still work really well in the overall context in the making of the album. I enjoyed the sound, I enjoyed the grit that the sound has, because this album feels slightly old school, especially from the production side of things, but it works really well because it also pushes some more modern ways of coming together as far as song constructions are concerned. The drums pair up extremely well with that more diverse guitar sound. They combine well in order to give each track a thick and voluminous experience. There's no song that's overly thin on this record. Maybe the ones that have more of a doom influence feel thin just because of how they come across and the mood that they create, but overall, this record always feels like it has a ton of volume. It always feels very thick, and that grit and that fuzziness in the sound adds to that thickness. The drums help establish that element, help define that element, pairing really well with what's happening on the guitar side. Now, vocally, I was expecting the album to be less dynamic. I was expecting the album to be a little bit more consistent, allowing you to see the red line that connects every single track, and that would be the consistent vocal performance in terms of the approach and in terms of the delivery. Not the case. This album is almost even more dynamic vocally than it is musically. And musically, it's a record that goes places but always finds a way of coming back to the same starting point. The same could not be said vocally. The record goes more, or the vocal performance goes more where the tracks are taking you. Songs that feel a little bit more punk in its dynamic, in its construction, a little bit more crossover thrash. You see a different style, you see a different approach. Songs that have more of a death metal influence into them, the vocals come a little bit lower. Songs that have more of an atmosphere or a dark aura behind them, the vocals feel a little bit more somber as well. So it's a record that vocally just matches each and every single song in terms of what they offer, not just from a lyrical point of view, but also from the music that surrounds those same lyrics. I enjoy that. I enjoy that diversity because, once again, overall this record, as far as it goes, it always finds a way back home. And finding a way back home allows this diversity to exist, but the album overall, vocally and musically, to still feel very balanced and very cohesive, feeling like it all belongs together and it is not necessarily just a collection of songs that are going in all sorts of different directions. And when I look at the big picture, that is the winning formula behind this album. I really enjoy this record. I was not expecting the album to be as good as it is. But when you look at the grit, when you look at the sound, when you look at the thickness, when you look at the more simplified approach, the more organic, raw approach that the overall album has, not overly producing every single element, this album works extremely well and is very captivating from that point of view because you almost feel like the band is performing right in front of you. And this adds value to the experience of listening to this record. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Scavengers. Methodic and heavy, it's really the two words to describe how this track goes. The drums and guitars have a very heavy and large volume to them. They fill in all the spaces. It's impossible to peel the layers of how textured this song is. This song is about creating this sound that's very uniform, that's very unified, and drums and guitars kind of melt into one just big experience. The verses are more methodic in the movement, and the vocals help create that same movement on the other side of the table, if you will. So this is an important balance that exists, and it creates for a more simple approach when it comes to the chorus. One line, Scavengers, easy to remember. It punches through really quickly, and then the overall chugginess that the guitars have, the old style production behind them, the oversimplified chorus. When you put all of this together, this almost sounds like a dirtier version of an Amon Amarth song, and I really enjoyed it. I love the chugginess on this track. I love the mixing of the guitar and drums coming together as one to give you that grit, and then the vocals emphasizing that grit and oversimplified chorus. Next we have Oblivion, super high tempo thrash track. This is like circle pit material. This song has tons of energy, is ferocious in sound and vocals, creating a super dynamic song, creating super dynamic mechanisms that make the track feel like it's pedal to the metal from the start all the way to the end. The vocals enhance the overall intensity and aggression of the track. Great bass sound, really pops in the mix. You can really feel it throughout this entire track, and honestly that high tempo energy that the song has allows that bass to come in and have a positive impact in helping create a little bit more volume, so that the volume that you're losing by the track moving so quickly doesn't really have a negative impact on your perception of the track. It's a song that has a second half more compact and heavier than the first half. It almost gathers speed, it gathers momentum, and then you feel like the track is becoming heavier as it's closing to its end. Nice progression, because you only notice it when you're already in it. It's not really defined. It's a little bit more subtle progression from start to finish as far as heaviness, as far as the brutality is concerned. Last but not least, No Salvation, another high octane track, very intense, very heavy, great sounding riff behind this song, and that really carries the track and carries the track well. It has a more deep, cavernous style vocal approach. So when you look at Oblivion and you look at this song, there are some similarities, but the main difference is the overall vocal approach. Here, the vocals go a lot lower. They feel a lot deeper. They're better mixed in within the overall experience of the song. So when you look at the thickness heaviness that the track has, the octane that the track moves with, the movement that it propels you, and then those deeper vocals all allow you to feel like it's a more substantial sounding song. More brutal, bigger track all around. It feels like it has that way of not losing any of its momentum as you progress. There is a demolishing slower bridge, and that slower bridge, while slowing down the movement of the song, it doesn't slow down the heaviness or the volume that the track has. It just grinds you down. It just holds you there. It puts you through the grinder. It enhances the heaviness that the song already has. It makes it more clear, and then it brings you back to a conclusion that mirrors the opening of the track, going full circle with a very methodic, interesting bridge that allows those two parts to connect and allows the song to be more engaging, more interesting, and not as repetitive. This is it, Siege of Power. This is tomorrow out February 17th on Metal Blade Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.